you'd like to learn hundreds, if not thousands, of popular songs, you need to learn what I call the 16 essential chords. Once you learn these 16 chords, you're going to be able to play songs by the Beatles, Eagles, James Taylor, Paul Simon, Rolling Stones. I mean, the list goes on and on. They all use these chords. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to memorize the chords, how to connect them, how to practice them, and I'll give you a few tips on what songs you might seek out that you can learn using some of these chords. So let's get started. All right, well, let's dig in. The first thing I want to talk about is that there are three what we call chord types. There's the major chord, there's the minor chord, and then there's the dominant 7 chord. The major chord has a kind of bold, happy, some people would say bright sound. It sounds something like this. The minor chord is more of a somber, or some people even describe it as a sad sounding chord, and it would sound something like this. So just open your ears for a moment and listen to the difference. Here's your major chord. Here's your minor chord. The first chord was E major, the second chord was E minor. And the third type of chord is what's called a dominant chord, or a dominant 7th chord. We actually just use the number 7, like I would say I'm going to play an E7 chord. The dominant 7 chord has a funky, bluesy kind of sound. Sounds like this. So we have major, we have minor, and we have the dominant 7th chord. And eventually, you want to be able to play each type of chord from any alphabet letter. So for instance, if you took the note C, you want to be able to play a C major chord, a C minor chord, and a C7 chord. If you took the note F sharp, you want to be able to play an F sharp major chord, F sharp minor chord, and an F sharp 7 chord. But today what we're going to do is we're going to learn these 16 essential chords, starting with the E chord. And then we're going to go in somewhat alphabetical order with a few exceptions. The reason we're starting with E and not, let's say, A, is because E is the lowest note on the guitar, the low E string. Okay? One thing to keep in mind, sometimes the chord, you'll strum all 6 strings, sometimes 5 strings, and sometimes 4 strings, depending upon the chord. So if we start with the E major chord, it sounds something like this. And did you notice I went string by string? I just want to make sure that every note in the chord is ringing out. Then we're going to switch from an E chord to an E minor chord. We'll go back to the E major, and then we're going to go to an E7 chord. And it's pretty important when you play this chord that you hear the open D string. That's what gives the chord its flavor. There's an alternate E7. You should try it on for size and see if you can get it. It's the same 2 fingers that we just used for E7, but with our pinky, we're going to add the 3rd fret of the B string. Okay, so let's practice those 3. We have E major. Just using a down, up strum. Now switch to E minor. Back to E major, and now E7. right, moving up the alphabet, for now we're gonna skip past the letter F and we're gonna go to G. And as part of the 16 essential chords, you only have to learn 2 G chords, a G major chord and a G7 chord. The G major chord sounds like this. Again, it's got a bright, kind of uplifting sound. And then the G7 chord kind of gets you into some blues territory. All right, so using the down up, we're going to go from G to G7, 2, 3, and 4, and G. G7. Great. Let's move up to the next alphabet letter in music. The music alphabet, G is followed by A, and there's going to be 3 A chords, A major. One thing I want to say about this chord is notice that I'm using my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers over here to grab this A shape. One reason is because it's easier to fit these 3 fingers that are a little bit smaller than the 1st finger. And when you play it this way, sometimes you're going to find situations where you need to move this shape up the fretboard and do things like this. So you want to keep your 1st finger free when you do that. But for today, just kind of concentrate on playing the A chord with these 3 fingers. Don't strum the low E string. It's muted. I sometimes bring my thumb around and kind of touch the string to mute it. And I try to strum from the A string so we get this sound. Then we'll move to an A minor chord. Again, it's a 5-string chord. And the 3rd A is A7. That funky blues sound. Okay, so let's play A minor, A7. 1 and 2 and down, up, down, up. A7. So just with those chords that I showed you, starting with the E chord, E minor, and you could play a lot of songs just with the chords that we just learned. For instance, Peaceful Easy Feeling starts out with an E chord and then it goes to an A chord. All right, so why don't we practice that for a second just to kind of get used to switching chords. And I'll show you a little trick that we all do, all guitar players do this. That is, when you're switching from one chord to the next chord, just before you switch to the 2nd chord, you can come up and touch or strum the top 2 or 3 strings, and that gives you a quick microsecond, to get into the next chord. So I'll demonstrate this in slow-mo. It would be like this. We're going to go from an E chord to an A chord. So here's the E. Then I do this. See how I lifted my hand up? That is on if you're strumming down, up, you're going to have 4 down ups in a measure. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And so on that last upstroke is where you lift up your hand and you play the open strings, and you lift up your hand and then you start to make the shape that you need for the next chord, and then you land on that chord. So it would be something like this. We're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we're going to play open strings and then come down on the A. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, down, up, down, up. 1. Back to E. So you might know the song Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles, right? It goes from an E chord to an A chord. And so forth. All right, so let's move on now. We're going to move from the, let's see, where were we? We were on the A chord. So now we're going to move up to B, and we're going to play B7. We're going to start with the dominant 7, the blues chord. This is an interesting chord because you start out with your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and that's the root, that's the B note. Then you play the 1st fret of the D string, and then the 2nd fret of the G string. And if you notice, you've got what I call a triangle shape. If you were to look at the diagram of this and connect the dots, you would have a triangle shape. The other thing about the B7 is when we add with the pinky, we add the 2nd fret on the top string. And if you notice, we have the root on the A string, then we skip a string and we stay in the same fret, and then we skip a string and stay in the same fret. Make sure your open B string rings out. And then we have this 1st fret over here as part of that triangle shape. So this chord has four notes in it, or you're going to use all 4 fingers. Now I'm going to give you a really great tip of how to burn in chord forms when you're learning these. Anytime you're learning a new chord, you make the chord and you squeeze your fingers into the fretboard. It almost makes impressions of the strings on your fingers. So you grab the shape, in this case it's B7, you squeeze, then you take your hand away and you put it on your knee. And then you come up to grab the B7 chord, and as you're coming up, you're thinking about what you're going to grab here, and you get that B7 chord. Then you let go, and you go back to your knee, and you come back up and grab the chord, and you just kind of go back and forth 3 or 4 times, and you'll start to have some muscle memory kick in, and you'll be able to grab these shapes. Okay, so let's keep going now. This is the B7 chord. Then we're going to play B minor, or now we're going to play B minor. The B minor uses what I call a stair step shape. Just check this out. You take your 1st finger and you put it on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, the 3rd fret of the B string, and the 4th fret of the G string. And you see what we've got here? They look like stair steps. And so we call this a stair step shape. Now, when you play the B minor chord, you can either strum just 3 strings, or if you like, you can bring in or incorporate the open D string as well. I kind of like just the top 3 for this. Okay, so let's play our B chords. B7, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and B minor, stair step. All right, going up the alphabet, B, we go to C. We're going to play 2 C chords. The first one is a C major chord. The trick to this chord is to try to get that G string to ring out, the open G string and the open E string, high E. And don't strum the low E. want to play C7, you just take your pinky and you put it on the 3rd fret of the G string, and we have C7. Okay, so let's go C, C7. 1, 2, 3, 4. C. C7. Okay, now we're almost there. So now C goes to D. There's going to be 3 different D chords. This is a 5-string strum, or 4-string if you prefer. Either works. So we'll start out with the D major chord. Let's try the D minor chord. And the D7 chord. All right, let's play those. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and D. D minor. Next alphabet letter is E, and we've already done the E, so now we're going to go on to the F chord. The F chord is the one that usually gives people a little bit of trouble because you have to take one finger, your first finger, and play 2 strings at the same time, 2 notes at the same time with one finger. And the 2 notes that we're going to play with that first finger would be at the 1st fret of the high E string and the 1st fret of the B string. And so you lay your finger, the tip of your finger, or actually this pad part here of your finger, across the 2 strings. They're kind of underneath your fingernail now. And then you invert this first joint here. So it looks like you're kind of pushing on a button, so to speak, like that. Okay? And so once you get that, this is called a bar. And so you have this bar happening. Then you bring your second finger over and you play the 2nd fret of the G string. And then you play the 3rd fret of the D string. And I like to strum this chord, I like to use 4 strings when I'm using this. So we would use the top 4 strings. So let's strum a little bit of the F. Don't worry if you're not getting this right away. Everybody has problems when they start out with it, but eventually the fingers adjust and kind of learn how to get all these notes to ring out. Okay, you can even in the beginning, if you want, just play the top 3 strings. Use your bar and then just this additional note and just strum 3 strings. But it helps if you can get this extra F in here, that 3rd fret of the D string, because that's the root of the chord. That's an F. All right, let's back up. We're going to play all 16 chords. Here we go. Starting with E, I'll call out the chords as we switch around. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and E. E minor. E7. G chord. G7. B7, Okay, so if you're just learning these, you know, I would be surprised if you got every one of those chords. But the reason I did that the way I did it is because if you want to kind of review for yourself and see what you know, what you don't know, what you need to work on, like I say, you just kind of start with the E chord, skip the F and go alphabetical order to the G's, the A's, the B's, the C's, the D's, and then tag on that F at the end. Okay. Another way to practice these is a lot of songs go from one chord and then they go up 4 alphabet letters. What do I mean by that? Well, like if you started with an E chord, okay, and then you count on your fingers. Count E is 1, E, F, G, A is 4. So E up 4 notches to A is a great sound. That always sounds good when you go up 4 notches on the alphabet. Here's E. Here's A. Sounds good. Let's say we played a D chord. So D is 1, E, F, G. D to G. And you can do it with the minor chords as well. E minor. I could go from E minor up to, you know, E, F, G, A, but if I wanted to, I could play A minor or A7 or A. So here's E minor. We go up 4 to, let's go to the A. How about E minor to A minor? Sounds great. Okay, so you know, now you can play, there's a lot of songs that you can play, especially blues-oriented songs. For instance, let's say you wanted to play something like there's a blues tune called Route 66, or there's a blues tune called, what's it called? Kansas City. Okay, so watch, I'm going to use 3 of the chords that we just learned, E7, A7, and B7. And I'll play the song for you. This is a blues progression. E7, I'm going to use this one, A7, and B7. And I'm going to use what's called a shuffle strum. It sounds like this. Down, up, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm playing on E7, just strumming on the E7. Now I'm going to go to A7, back to the E7, to the B7, A7, E7. Great. All right, so one last thing I'd like to say is, you know, if you want to go out and seek some songs where you can apply these chords, look in the repertoire of like Eagles is a great place to start. Beatles, you know, some of the James Taylor stuff, Rolling Stones. So here's a tip for one of the songs you might think about playing is Tequila Sunrise by Eagles. That uses the G chord, it uses A minor, it uses a C chord, D7, there's a B minor in there, there's an E7, there's an E minor. So that would be a good song to practice to burn in some of these chords. Okay, well, I hope that helps you or give you a process to learn some chords, and of course then to learn some songs. And once you learn those 16 chords, that's your foundation, and then you can start building on that and start adding other chords to your repertoire, and you're going to have a lot of fun playing all the songs you ever wanted to play. So have fun with that, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel on your way out. For more information on my signature guitar and musicianship courses, check out the information in the links below. Bye for now.